Well, welcome back, everyone. This is the second in our series for Lent, exploring how we are called to be the church in different ways. And today we are called to be the church to celebrate God's presence. And so I'm really excited to have someone who regularly helps us celebrate God's presence with his musical abilities here joining me. And so, Dylan, maybe if you could start just by introducing yourself, a little bit of your background and what brings you to St. Paul's.
Well, I mean, obviously, like you just said, hi, it's Dylan. I came to St. Paul's because my parents got a separation, and well, I started going with my dad because it helped him. Eventually, I started liking it more, and then I was helping out around the place, and well, yeah, now I'm just going there.
And how did you get started on drumming?
From a very surprising point of view, I used to like beatboxing a lot, and then from there, my dad pushed me towards drumming.
Okay, so there's the rhythm is what brought you in.
Yeah,
Nice.
I didn't have as good hand-eye coordination as I thought, but it eventually got better.
Well, everything takes practice, and we're glad that you're here helping us out. It certainly helps just bring the music that much more together when we've got good drums. And for people, how old are you, and what do you do?
I am 16. I am a student. I sadly don't have a job. Maybe that's not so sad. I mean, I have tons of free time.
Good. And what school?
Evan Hardy Collegiate.
Excellent. Good. And so you're here to talk to us about celebrating God's presence. And so those are big words. What do you think celebrate God's presence might mean for us?
So, I mean, it's obvious celebrating, it's everyone does it different. In the case of God, not everyone wants to throw a party. It's a more private event for some people, which is why people, they take time. They don't want to rush the things because they want to notice God is there in the world. It's not always going to be obvious. Sometimes you have to look a bit harder because it's not going to be in front of your face. It's going to be hidden behind something in those moments of trouble. But He is always going to be there. And that's why some people, they like to relax by taking spiritual walks. It's another way people just celebrate the presence. Like, I know none of these sound like actual celebrating, but especially during COVID, you have to take personal time with God. You can't be in a giant group unless Zoom calls, but those don't happen as much.
Right. So to you, celebrating, it's not just, in outside the church celebrations, you think of like a big event like a powwow where you've got just like hundreds of people and music and there's noise and it's a party. And
Yeah, everyone's having fun. Yeah.
church can be that, but uh, it's also celebrating God's presence also looks like more quieter and everyday things is I think what I hear you saying.
Yeah, really, if you're realizing He has a presence there, because truly God always is there. His presence, it's always lingering. It's not just when the candle's lit. As we've said at church, even once that goes out, God is still with you.
Mm.
And realizing that is really what the core of celebrating God's presence is. So, yeah.
And and so God's present where?
Quite literally everywhere, in the hallway, just outside, at work, when you're eating McDonald's, whatever,
Yeah.
just anywhere.
And so then celebrating God's presence, it's something we can do together on church, but it's also something we can do literally everywhere.
Yeah, because like I said, He's always there. His presence, it will never leave you. In the hard times, in the good times, God will be by your side. Yeah.
Next time I go to McDonald's, I'm going to have to stop, remember this conversation and say, okay, Dylan says God's here in McDonald's. Okay,
Well,
where?
I mean,
And pay attention.
I'm not sure He's in McDonald's physically. I mean, have you seen the washrooms?
But God's still working there. And maybe it's the couple on their first date, or hopefully your first date is a McDonald's, but if it is, that's
Hopefully.
great. But maybe it's the family, the kids celebrating a good hockey
Yeah.
game. Maybe it's in those moments that God's present in all kinds of places, not just special places like the church building.
Yeah, like if the worker behind the till, he had a bad day or something, God's with him, helping him through it.
Mm.
The guy who's eating extra fries when he's supposed to be putting them in it, God might take one or two of them that is very good.
Nice. I really like this image. I'm gonna have to. I might steal this for a sermon sometime about. But I like that reminding us. There's a psalm that talks about where you can go to the very furthest edges of the ocean and God will still be there with you. And maybe the modern psalm would be, you can go to the grungiest and most commercial of places and God's still there and God still wants to be with you.
Yeah, it's quite comforting actually, because
Yeah.
he's never going to abandon you. And never truly alone. It, yeah.
Yeah. We are not alone. Good. Um, and so thinking about us as St. Paul's in COVID, there's been lots of change and you've been helping lead us through that by making sure we can, have some good online services. How do you think during COVID we celebrate God's presence?
Well, I mean, one of the things you just said, online, it's most important. I mean, you can't always have a socially distanced church sermon. I mean, you need a massive church and basically no one attending it too, because, 6 foot. But because it's online and everything, even men's group that can go online, any of the small groups, they can go onto the Zoom call and appreciate God together. They can celebrate his presence. And then, like I was saying before, with COVID, most of the things people do is personal. It's by themselves, it's walks with God, or just acknowledging that he's there.
Mm.
There's really no wrong way to do it, as long as it's not against the law. But I mean, there's a few wrong ways.
Yeah,
But
we got
yeah,
to, as long as there's less than 30 of you, you're all 2 meters apart and wearing masks, you can celebrate God's presence.
in a giant group,
Yeah.
yes. Preferably not in a giant group, because that is still very not
Yeah.
safe.
Um, I wonder, are there other ways where we as a church, or where maybe not even as a church, you talk about God is present everywhere, where we can experience or share or help other people experience God's presence?
I mean, experience and sharing, doing God's work is essentially what you're saying. Yeah. That's a different way of celebrating his presence, because it's showing other people that he is truly there. It's helping them celebrate. It's basically the core of what we do at St. Paul's: the soup lunch, the breakfasts, the refugee family. I don't know what else we've been doing lately. I just bad memory, I guess.
No, it's all good. So, there's this old hymn, worship and work must be one or will be one. And it's that, when we're doing mission,
Yeah.
it's both celebrating God's presence, but it's also inviting other people to have that positive experience of God. That
It,
when we're loving, it's helping people experience the God who is love.
yeah, like by helping others experience it, that's one of the better ways of actually celebrating his presence, especially during COVID. You pass someone on the street or anything, if you can find a way to somehow share God's presence with them, be it like they had a bad day, maybe you had a quick word with them or something, or even now, because the 6 foot distance thing, you could take your way off the sidewalk, they could have it. That would be just a small way of showing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then thinking about us as a church, both collectively and each of us individually, what do you see us doing well? I like having positive things to celebrate. What do you want to celebrate about St. Paul's?
Positivity. That is literally all we are. I don't think I've ever seen a negative thing there.
Hmm.
We do nothing but celebrate God positively. We show that he is all loving. He doesn't care. He's forgiving. I mean, he does care, but
Yeah.
I think you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we try and show people that it's not to be afraid of God and they should be comfortable with him. We help people celebrate, other than, well, celebrating in church itself with joyous music and essentially a party.
Yeah. I look forward to the days when we can have enough people we could call our worship services a party, but
Fair
someday,
enough.
someday in the future. And so I like that idea that St. Paul's is positive. How do you think we stay positive?
I mean, part of the reason we stay positive, it's just what we're known for, obviously. People are happy to go there because it's been positive for so long.
Mm,
I don't think it's possible to go into the church feeling angry.
mm,
You just immediately you feel positive. There's that light that it's now on you, apparently.
Right.
It's also the feeling that you know God is there. You know nothing's going to be wrong. Everything's okay now. That kind of thing.
Well, I'm glad St. Paul's is a place where you go in, you can't go in angry, and hopefully we keep doing that, because I think that's what God wants us to be, a place where a place and a time and a people who do celebrate God's presence together. Is there any more wisdom you'd like to share with us today, Dylan, about celebrating God's presence?
I mean, I am only 16, not the wisest egg of the bunch.
You
I
got
don't even
plenty.
think that's a saying. But uh, I mean, just basically helping other people see is the most important way to celebrate.
Hmm.
Because if you celebrate by yourself, that's great. But getting other people to celebrate as well, that's, well, perfect, obviously. Because people that don't have God, maybe they need him.
Hmm.
Maybe it'll help them through the tough times. If they don't realize that he's there, well, then that's too bad because they're not going to actually get the help they need.
Hmm.
By showing people that God is there, it not only helps you celebrate, but it also helps them through whatever they're going through,
Right. So
be it
we
a
should
bad day or, yeah,
support
anything.
and share positive experiences of God with other people, and that helps
Yeah.
both us and it helps them. And I like that.
And as I said earlier, as long as you remember to look through the mundane, everything, the obvious around you, you can always find God because he truly is there, be it hidden behind, well, your desk or a coworker. He
Hmm.
will be there, not physically, metaphorically.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dylan, for sharing. And I know you. There's a passage, I want to say Jeremiah, that says, "Don't look down on me just because I'm young." And so you might be young, but I think you've certainly taught me a few things, and hopefully will teach all of us a few things. So thank you for being brave and being strong, like we're all called to be in this time, and for taking some time with me to share a little bit about celebrating God's presence. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.